In the Bubble is brought to you by Living Guard, a Swiss hygiene company that has applied their virus deactivating technology to face masks. Even as more and more people get vaccinated, which is important, there are still going to be situations where you may feel more comfortable wearing a mask, like in a mall or public transit. Or you may have to wear a mask, like on an airplane or in certain businesses. I imagine you want the best mask technology for that reason. So, when I'm getting on a plane, I wear my Living Guard mask. Browse our entire range of products, now including t-shirts, polos, and other apparel, and purchase your masks today at shop.livingguard.com. That's shop.livingguard.com and use the code BUBBLE10 for 10% off. Throughout the pandemic, in communities across the country, CVS Health has been there. They've opened 4,800 test sites, administered more than 23 million COVID-19 tests, and given more than 17 million vaccine doses. With many still staying home, they've expanded their access to prenatal and postpartum care via telemedicine, increased remote access to mental health services, and invested in affordable housing to help build healthier communities. Every day, CVS Health works to bring quality, affordable healthcare into neighborhoods, homes, and hands, so it's never out of reach for anyone. Learn more at cvshealth.com.
Lemonada.
Welcome to In the Bubble. I'm your host, Andy Slavitt. I want to wish everybody a happy Independence Day. It's funny to think back a year at Independence Day last year, which was kind of a blur to me. I don't think I was sure whether or not it made sense to gather to see fireworks. Things were bad, but undoubtedly the worst was yet to come. I don't think we quite knew how much worse it would get, but it got a lot worse. This episode of Safe or Unsafe begins the third week of our 10-part series with a focus on where are we now? And here we are a year later, and I can say without question that the worst is behind us. Without question. So for those of you who haven't heard Safe or Unsafe before, it is our kind of fun game show way of posing your questions to two esteemed epidemiologists, Caitlin Rivers and Farzad Mostashari. They compete fiercely to provide better answers. And of course, I'm the judge. And Wednesday, we have Scott Gottlieb, the former director of the FDA and just one of the smartest and most attuned people around. You're not going to want to miss that show. So the idea behind both of those shows is what sounds simple, but it's deceivingly so. It's about following the science. Following the science. Should we just follow the science blindly? Is the science always right? Should we doubt science? It's a complex set of questions. But there is a state of the science which tells us, based on everything we know, what the best answers are. But it's not just about following the science. It's also about learning to do what we're comfortable with. Let me discuss what that means and what the difference is. Because we make decisions all the time where we want to understand what the science tells us. We want to understand what the facts tell us. And then we make our decision. So if the science says when climbing a mountain with all of the protective gear on, you can safely climb 30 feet up the mountain, you might do that. But you might feel comfortable only going up 20 feet. Maybe you're scared of heights. Maybe you want to be a little more conservative. Whatever the reason. Let's say the law says you can drive 70 miles an hour on a highway. You may choose to drive 70, but you also may choose to drive 65. There's nothing wrong with that. You're adjusting for what you feel is right. Maybe your car, maybe your own sense of the conditions, the weather, the lighting. whatever it is. I think wearing a mask indoors, which is what there's a lot of noise in different states about, should they bring back the mask mandate given the Delta variant, is very much the same thing. So let's be clear what the science says. The science says that if you're fully vaccinated, double vaccinated with an mRNA vaccine, to be even more specific, plus 3 weeks or 4 weeks, depending on the vaccine, the science says you do not need to wear a mask indoors for your own health. And if you were strictly paying attention to the science, that is the answer that you'd be given. But we also have to pay attention to our own psychology. There are reasons why we may choose to wear a mask indoors, and that's okay. But be very clear about this. The state of the science on the Delta variant is clear that we don't need to wear masks indoors. Let me tell you what the science isn't. The science isn't a few things. The science isn't telling you what you should do. The science isn't infallible and unchangeable. Science isn't reading about someone who got vaccinated and then got COVID. It's not about even someone who got vaccinated and got COVID and got hospitalized or died. Because the science is that there are very few cases, small number, couple of thousand, out of several hundred million. Okay? That's what the science says. So don't be taken off your game by thinking that the science has it perfectly right, or that the science doesn't evolve, or that the science says that the vaccine protects you 100% of the time. That is not the science. Therefore, take hold of the science and adjust to do what you want to do. I have news for you. We are going to need to live with ambiguity. So part of coming out of this pandemic healthy, whole, sound, responsible, comfortably is learning to live with ambiguity. I know for a lot of us that's not easy. It's just not. We like to have clear-cut answers. And people are very angry right now with the CDC. They're very angry with people who they feel aren't giving them straight answers, instead of understanding that getting the truth doesn't mean you're getting clear answers all the time, because there aren't always clear answers. I've said this before. We are moving COVID to a stage where it's a manageable challenge. That means 70% of the time, we will know what to do. And 30% of the time, we will have to use our own judgment, informed by what we know and understand about the science. We need to decide what we ourselves, our families, are comfortable doing. People may hate that, but I would put to you, would you really want it any differently? Would you really want false sense of security? Would you really want someone else making these decisions for you? So let's get informed. Let's live with ambiguity. So let's go back a bit. In part 2 of our series, we heard some trusted voices. Dr. Walensky, Jen Psaki. Why do I say they're trusted? They're trusted because they're honest. They're not trusted because they're perfect or always know what to do. They're trusted because they're humble. They're trusted because they caveat. They're trusted because they look at the data. So the mask guidance that Dr. Walensky and CDC put out, some people didn't like. They didn't like it because it felt confusing to them. Well, guess what? Some things are confusing, and we're going to need to learn to live with that. But between Dr. Walensky, our 2 guests today, and Scott Gottlieb on Wednesday, I would be hard-pressed to bring you any 4 more reliable people to present their views. And there is a great deal of consistency with what they say. And it's not perfect consistency. There is a little bit of a difference, which allows for the fact that we have an opportunity to bring our own judgment to things. But all of them are saying what the science says consistently. It's for you to decide. There are, in fact, multiple right answers, as there are to many things. That's the place you need to live. Ambiguity, your judgment. And if you don't like that, again, ask yourself whether you'd want to have it any other way. I don't think we would. So the first two parts of this series that you've heard so far raised a lot of questions about the past, about how we hear information, and the first answer to all of those questions are coming to you this week. We know what the science says, and if you're vaccinated, the news is good. If you're vaccinated, the news is good. But it's okay to still be nervous. And it's also okay not to be nervous. Let's finish the sermon there and hear from our contestants, Farzad Mostashari and Caitlin Rivers, two great epidemiologists. So people are feeling weird. They're feeling like in a suspended state of animation. For some people, the pandemic was long over. For some people, the pandemic is still ever-present part of their life. And still for others, I think maybe they know intellectually that they're safer than they've ever been because they've been vaccinated. But emotionally, it's hard to get there. And of course, there's a lot of decisions to make at the edge of things that are really just sort of practical. So we're using that as a background to play yet another game of safe or unsafe with Team Caitlin Rivers and Team Farzad Mostashari. I don't have to tell you that these are two very accomplished public health leaders. And if I did, I'm not sure that I'd be telling you the truth because, I don't know, Caitlin is just slightly more accomplished than Farzad. But good to have you guys back.
Hi, Andy. Nice to see you. Nice to see you again.
I don't want to create false equivalence between you two.
That's fair. Totally fair. I'm on Team Caitlin, frankly.
How are you, Caitlin?
I'm shocked and awe with the support I'm getting right now.
You ask yourself, is it really support? Is it support for you or is it abuse for Farzad? Don't be so sure.
He's just setting you up with high expectations, Caitlin. I wouldn't want those high expectations if I were you.
Israel is reporting some disturbing statistics with the Delta variant outbreak and fully vaccinated adults. California recently suggested that maybe the indoor mask mandate ought to be reconsidered and are recommending that people consider wearing masks indoors. Do you think we should continue to wear masks indoors or not if we're fully vaccinated? Caitlin.
Well, the current evidence suggests that the vaccines still work well against Delta. And so I don't think at the individual level, risk has changed much for people who are fully vaccinated. But at the community level, taking into account people who are not yet fully vaccinated, I do think we're heading into a period of increased risk. And that's where I think the motivation around recommending masks is really making sure the community is doing everything we can to keep transmission down. So I'm still wearing masks in public indoor spaces, when I go to the grocery store, when I go to the library, but I feel well protected with my 2 vaccines.
So do you do it for your own protection or do you do it for some other reason?
Well, first of all, because I think it's courteous. And second of all, because there are people who are still unvaccinated. I don't think I'm a risk to them and they're not a risk to me, but it's kind of a collective action solidarity move.
Okay. So that's a very valid reason, but it's not because you feel unsafe if you're not wearing a mask.
Not at all.
Farzad, how do you think about this?
So let's parse the data, the disturbing data from Israel. Look, half the people who were infected were kids who weren't vaccinated. And it's important to note because most of the population of Israel is not kids. So the vaccine, even just that data point, if you think like an epidemiologist, says to you that the vaccine is protective of people being cases. And then second, those who got it and we'll hear people who were, cases who were vaccinated, they're not getting severe illness. And there weren't cases of severe illness among those vaccinated with Delta reported from Israel. So by and large, I think it is important to note that if you are fully vaccinated, and I'll add particularly with the mRNA vaccines, then you are very well protected against the Delta variant, including, and there does also appear to be still protection against not passing it on. So from my personal calculus, I am fully vaccinated. I would feel comfortable being in indoor spaces without a mask. And I got to tell you, it feels great. It feels awesome. I am so glad to be, and it wasn't that big a deal, but it feels really great now to have a more normal return to normalcy. And I do think that, it should continue to be an incentive for people to go get vaccinated.
Got it. So you dine indoors, or you're indoors in other settings without a mask, you feel safe.
I do.
And if you're in a community with higher amounts of spread than we have today, would your answer change?
I mean, look, I will follow whatever the local ordinances are. I will follow whatever the store wants me to do. Of course, I'm going to have my mask with me, but I think that even in those communities, the risk to those people is because they're not vaccinated. And I think that the number one message should be get vaccinated.
Okay, that's very clear. Okay, let's talk about travel, including air travel within the U.S. for fully vaccinated people, presuming that the Delta variant becomes a dominant variant. Farzad, safe or unsafe?
Fully vaccinated, I think it is still safe. The one caveat I brought last time was if there are variants that seem to cause more severe illness among people, the 464 variants, I think those still, I would be looking at the prevalence rate of those. Those are still low. So I'm satisfied. I would wear a mask, obviously, during travel because you don't know where people are coming from and what variants they might carry.
And them's the rules. But I think one of the things we have going for us is that the more problematic strains got outcompeted by strains that the variants work for. And that may be serendipity, but we'll take it. Which is to say that both the Alpha, which is the one that came from the UK, and the Delta, which is the one that came from India, those are the ones that become dominant. And they are actually in some ways our friend if we've been vaccinated because they are beating up on the variants that are more challenging for us. Caitlin, safe or unsafe? Same question.
I agree with Farzad. I'm comfortable with travel. You have to wear a mask anyways because that's the rule, so you might as well wear a good one, but I have traveled.
Let's talk about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. We had Rochelle Walensky on the show last week. We asked her about this. Let me ask you guys as well. In terms of returning to normalcy, you've just said if you've gotten 2 doses of the mRNA vaccine, you really have a lot of freedom. There may be reasons for you to wear masks, but you're not concerned. What about those with a single Johnson & Johnson dose, considering the rise of the Delta variant? Caitlin, start with you.
Well, look, the efficacy of the J&J is lower than the mRNA. We've known that, and I think that will continue to be true as we see more variants. There's currently not a lot of data, and there's certainly no official guidance or evidence about what to do if you have received 1 dose of J&J. I am postulating that you are probably still very well protected against severe illness, hospitalization, and death, but probably less protected against mild illness. So for now, if I were vaccinated with J&J, I would hold tight. I would continue to go about my day, but probably wearing that mask, and I would just keep an eye out if any additional guidance comes out.
And what would you do, Farzad?
I'll be on a different side of this. If I had gotten a single dose of J&J, I would get a booster.
And which booster would you get? mRNA or would you get another
mRNA.
Johnson & Johnson?
I would get mRNA.
Okay.
I'd get an mRNA booster. And as Caitlin said, the evidence isn't there, but I think the logic from other vaccines and other respiratory viruses would say that getting a booster, just as if you had natural immunity, getting a booster with an mRNA vaccine seems to boost the strength as well as the duration of your immunity. I would suspect that it would do that as well for me, and I would, in the absence of official guidance, I would choose to get a second booster.
So I hate to sound wimpy and I hate to sound overly kind, which is just not my personality, but both your answers are correct and acceptable according to folks. It's very reasonable to wait and see, particularly given the low prevalence. But if you are more conservative and want to have more protection, particularly if you tolerate the vaccines well, I think there is an unofficial support for people who say, you know what, I want to get a single mRNA vaccine to make sure I am more protected. In the Bubble is brought to you by Living Guard, a Swiss company revolutionizing the hygienic technology industry. Even as more and more people get vaccinated, which is great and important, there are still going to be situations where you may feel more comfortable wearing a mask, like in a mall or in public transit. Or you may have to wear a mask, like on an airplane or in certain businesses. I imagine you'll want the best mask technology for that reason. So, when I'm getting on a plane, I wear my Living Guard mask. Living Guard masks come in multiple sizes and colors and have adjustable ear straps for a really comfortable fit. And when worn daily and washed weekly, these masks can be worn over 200 times, making them a more environmentally friendly mask choice. Living Guard has also started applying their technology to other forms of apparel. Browse their entire range of products, now including t-shirts, polos, and more, and purchase your masks today at shop.livingguard.com. That's shop.livingguard.com and use the code BUBBLE10 for 10% off. Throughout the pandemic, CVS Health has been there. They are more than 300,000 caring employees, ensuring millions of Americans can access healthcare services. They've administered more than 23 million COVID-19 tests at their stores and through partners in underserved communities. They've given more than 17 million vaccine doses and are offering same-day and walk-in appointments at more than 9,600 CVS pharmacy locations nationwide. And with many still staying home, they're supporting safer pregnancies by expanding access to prenatal and postpartum care via telemedicine. Nothing should stand in the way of mental health and well-being, so they're increasing remote access to mental health services. Recognizing the strong connection between housing and health, they're investing in affordable housing to support underserved populations and build healthier communities. Every day, CVS Health works to bring quality, affordable healthcare closer to home, so it's never out of reach for anyone. Learn more at cvshealth.com. If you're sending kids to camp, this is a question from Robin Graham. If you're sending kids to camp who aren't yet vaccinated, would you draw any restrictions? Would you want them to be wearing masks? Are there activities you wouldn't want them to undertake? Is it okay for them to go swimming? Farzad?
Yeah, I mean, I think if anything, since the first time we spoke about this question, things have gotten dramatically safer. Outdoor obviously has been great all along. Swimming is fine, all that stuff. But the prevalence of incidence of cases has just gone down so dramatically in the U.S. because of vaccination and probably also some contribution of seasonality. They really are as low as they've been. So I would feel pretty comfortable. And you know, the other thing that again, Caitlin and I sparred about a little bit is, like, for kids, it was always, you know, pretty safe. If you sent your kids to camp when there was, you know, there were other or school when there was flu around, then I think you would be fine sending them to camp now.
Caitlin?
My oldest is in camp and she wears a mask when indoors and does not wear one outdoors. And my younger kids are also in childcare. They're not good at wearing masks and I don't sweat it too much. So I largely agree with Farzad, but I do enforce the restrictions that I can around masking indoors.
Okay, now we're going to talk about immunosuppressed or immunocompromised folks. Two different questions. One from Lynn Lyon, who's wondering if she wears a mask and has 2 Moderna vaccines, whether or not that's enough protection, or should she be isolating at home again? Farzad.
I think if you are wearing a mask, one of the things that's been really impressive has been how, in a way, how low the prevalence has been for people who wore masks consistently throughout the pandemic. And people who, in many cases, you know, were healthcare workers who were exposed all the time, but wore masks and wore good masks. So I think that I'm sure that there is legitimate concern for people who are immunosuppressed even after they've been vaccinated. But I think the combination of the vaccines, even if they don't have full efficacy, wearing a good mask well, and the decrease in prevalence in the community, people who are vaccinated are also less likely to pass it on to you. I think those three should combine to make you feel more comfortable.
That you don't have to stay home all the time. That there's certain situations you can be out for.
I would say that, yes.
Good. Okay, Caitlin, agree?
I agree. You can get N95s or KN95s really easily now. They're about 50 cents a piece. And so I think that would be the first order of business. And I think the second order of business would be to get together with your specialist and see what you can do about boosting your immunity or developing a plan for being able to still participate in the community while immunocompromised.
I'm going to emphasize something that Caitlin said, which is a place where she probably earns a point. Sorry, Farzad, because you're excellent. Your answers have been excellent so far, Farzad. I want you to know that this has been the top of your game. I know your game isn't everybody's game, but for your game, it's been good. But the point about the type of mask, we are at a point now, which is a different place we were before, where there is an abundance of N95 and K95 masks. And so if you are concerned, if because you're immunocompromised or whatever reason, then don't just wear a mask, wear an N95 mask. There are heroic people that were inside the government, inside the Biden administration, at least when I was there, who really fixed the supply chain for N95s as masks came down. We do not have a shortage. We are no longer recommending that healthcare workers reuse N95 masks. If you have a concern, ditch the cloth, wear the N95. That's my addition, prompting it based upon your comment, Caitlin. But there's another element where I think Farzad actually did make a very interesting point as well. So I'm going to have to give him a little bit here, which is that the prevalence now is so low as so many other people are getting vaccinated. Becky Garrick asks the question, if you're going to a very large indoor event and you're immunocompromised, but there's a requirement that everybody else there is vaccinated, and there's no social distancing. Actually, the event she's considering is an opera. I didn't know there were 3,000 people that could go to an opera. Should she feel comfortable attending, even though she's immunocompromised, knowing that everyone is required to be vaccinated? Farzad, where do you go with that one?
I guess I would be a little concerned, only because, I don't know about the enforcement of the everyone vaccinated part of it. I mean, I think if you take as the premise of the question that everyone's vaccinated, then I'd be more comfortable. Sure.
If you're going to an opera, you're not going to lie.
Opera goers.
If it was a bullfight, maybe you'd lie. But if an opera, I don't think people go to operas generally lie.
It's probably all adults too, which weighs in favor.
I'm typecasting here. Yeah. But I bet you that the number of liars that go to operas is one of the lowest numbers you can imagine.
Depends on the opera.
Okay, Gilbert and Sullivan is an exception.
Exactly.
Fine. I'll give you that. Okay. What should someone do if they've had an adverse reaction to the first dose of the mRNA vaccine? Is there another option for them to get fully vaccinated? Should they take a dose of a different COVID vaccine? Should they power through and take another one of the one they had the adverse reaction to? Do you have a point of view on that, Caitlin?
I would see an allergist. That's what they're for. I would see an allergist. They can help you figure out what's an option for you.
Cop out, but fine.
I mean, I don't know. Yeah, that's a very specific question.
It's a legit answer. It's a legit answer.
It depends on what the component is you're allergic to, and so I don't know if you can just switch to the J&J and expect a different result. I'm not sure.
All true, but I'm going to say this: unless your reaction was intolerable, and or something that your doctor tells you is dangerous, really important to get the second mRNA vaccine. Again, unless there are exceptional circumstances, the first vaccine we're seeing doesn't hold up as well against the variants, much like natural immunity alone without a vaccine doesn't hold up extremely well. So if you want a long-lasting, secure situation, and you're talking about like a day with a fever or a headache, my advice is grin and bear it. If it's something more serious than that, yes, I think you're right.
Yeah, I think by extension, Andy, from what we know, when when in clinical practice you talk to someone and they say, "Oh yeah, I had a bad reaction to the flu shot," right? More often than not, they don't actually have an allergy, right? Or I have an allergy to penicillin. What was your allergy? Well, I had stomach ache, right? Like those are not those. I think you have to be careful not to say, like as you said, if you had a fever or a headache or local pain, that was an actual allergic reaction to the vaccine that would bar you from having the second dose.
Heather Harding wants to know why, if someone in her family has had COVID, they still need a vaccine. And I think the answer is having COVID is like having a first dose. You at least need a second dose, although I would probably get 2 doses. Any disagreement from either of you there? I'm going to give myself a point, actually.
Yeah, that was a good
I think I might beat both of you.
We're tied. It's not good to be tied with the host.
Home field advantage. Yes. Would you travel to France in August? How risky would that be if you were fully vaccinated in early March? This is from someone who wants to go to France.
I would pick up that N95 or KN95 for the trip, but yes, I would go.
For the trip. Okay. John Ling Ulat asks, is it safe to resume indoor swimming at a gym while fully vaccinated? Safe or unsafe?
Safe.
Safe.
Jennifer Hardy wants to know, are gyms safe in general? She wants to return to the gym, but she lives in a conservative county in California with only a 56% vaccination rate. Is it safe for her to go to the gym, or should she find another thing to do?
They are not safe if you are unvaccinated. They're high-risk settings, but if you are vaccinated, yes, you can go back to the gym.
Yeah, not safe for them, safe for you.
As a vaccinated person, is it safe to be at an inside event like a large church gathering, 1,000+ people, that's a mega church, without a mask? Many may not be vaccinated, and nobody would be wearing a mask. How about for the vaccinated person, safe or unsafe, without a mask?
I think that this is similar to the community prevalence of the variants question. It is just about as high risk a setting as you're going to have. Thousands of people, no social distancing, no masks, singing, right? There's a lot of particles floating in the air there. So it's about as high risk as you're going to get. The vaccine offers you great protection. The one thing that I would want to know is what is the genomic surveillance of the variants in the community that we're sitting in.
Okay. Anything you'd add to that, Caitlin?
I would wear a mask. If you're fully vaccinated, your risk of it getting infected is low, but like, why tempt fate? As far as I'd said, it's a high-risk setting, so I would wear a mask.
Okay, now just some quick final thoughts on the speed round. If last year your alert level was a 10 on a scale of 1 to 10, right now, as you think about the summer, what's your alert level or concern level on a scale of 1 to 10 for people who have been vaccinated? Farzad.
0.1.
Caitlin.
As a person living through the pandemic, very low, 1, less than 1. As an epidemiologist who feels some responsibility for keeping track of what's coming, I do worry about the Delta variant for people who are unvaccinated. And so from that perspective, it's unfortunately a little bit higher. Yeah,
I was going to ask for people who are unvaccinated as well. I think you were trying to show a little moral superiority there to Farzad, but it backfired.
You said if you're vaccinated.
I did. I said if you're vaccinated. I think it backfired on Caitlin. This sort of virtue signaling as an epidemiologist.
She's just a better person than I am.
I had no way to know that you were going to ask a follow-up question.
I was going to say that if you're in the U.S., yes, but gosh, it is hard to feel like we're have this thing behind us, seeing what's happening in the world. That's the tragedy.
Right. Okay, you're a good person too.
Thank you.
By the way, I have no problem with virtue signaling because you have to have virtue to signal, so I'm good with it. It's just a minority opinion, maybe. Okay, play yourself out to the fall and winter. We've got some vaccine. A few things are happening. Maybe we've got some waning immunity. Maybe we've got the change of weather that's pushing people indoors. Maybe we've got dominance of Delta or Delta Plus or something. Your overall alert level for people who are vaccinated on a scale of 1 to 10. And Caitlin, what would you say?
No concern. Low concern.
Farzad.
If you look at if we take that this is going to become endemic, and I think it is going to be endemic. If you look at all coronaviruses, there's just such sharp seasonality to them. So I expect that in the late fall, we're going to see another spike. And all those factors that you said, variants, waning immunity, are going to play into it. So I think we are going to see another bump. Whether it becomes another wave is going to depend on whether we can get boosters in arms. And I think the kid piece is going to be important.
Solving for boosters. Do you conceive of hospitals being overrun and at risk again in the coming season?
I don't think anything like the 3 waves we had.
So is the worst behind us?
The worst is definitely behind us. But I for the fall, my concern might go up from a 0.1 now to a 1.
I will say, too, that we're already seeing hospitalizations rise in Missouri and Arkansas, some of the states that have low levels of vaccine coverage and more virus circulating right now. So I wouldn't totally write out the possibility that we find ourselves in another tight spot. But for people who are vaccinated, I feel confident that the vaccines will hold up.
And for people who are unvaccinated, all kidding aside, your 10 is not a 1, but it's about more like a 5, 6, or 7, Caitlin, I think is what I heard you say.
You're at risk. You continue to be at risk. The Delta variant is very infectious. It will find you, I fear. And so you should get vaccinated.
Okay. Final question. 1-word answer only. Starting with Caitlin. Lab or bat?
Probably bat, but we can't say for sure either way. How can you do that in 1 word? That's unfair.
Farzad? Lab or bat?
Bat.
Okay. That brings us to the end of our show. And I want to thank you both. But I want to just actually give it I think we should close with an essay question because I think this is all cute. You guys have been very helpful. I think you guys have been very much on the same theme, which is the world's ambivalent. It feels weird. But yes, in fact, if you've been vaccinated, the same world you're looking at before that wasn't as safe is now very, very safe. And there's very few limitations. And if you haven't been vaccinated, the opposite is still true, unfortunately. But there's something deeper than the facts that are causing people to struggle. And that's some of the psychology, perhaps, with adjusting back. Maybe it's because of the trauma we've all been through. Maybe because it feels like, is it really an on and off switch? Maybe it's because there's just continued stories and you see the words like Delta and we've sort of trained ourselves. So in addition to being, I think, super epidemiologists and clinicians, you're both also parents. You're great people. You're wonderful communicators. So I'm wondering if you just have a thought to share about how to help people think about the adjustment, the psychological adjustment of moving back from a place where we've been to a place which makes it easier to accept that indeed these changes are occurring and we can, in fact, get back many of the things in our life that we'd had to put on hold. So that's a rather serious question, but I think it's an important one that I think everybody's racked with. Farzad, do you want to start with that?
We all collectively, have to give each other space for a little bit of PTSD coming out of this, and it has been traumatic. It's been the isolation, the fear of contact, the fear of engaging in so many things that make life meaningful for so many of us. Those things are real, and coming out of it we got to give people a break, cut people a break. But I think the antidote to it is the very thing that we were missing all along. It's that human connection. And, I for one, I'm a hugger. So, I will make myself available. I'm not going to make myself available to colleagues and friends for hugs, because I think it is that contact that we've been so missing, and it's going to feel so great.
So true. And Caitlin, any words of wisdom or solace or support that you'd offer?
I think what's been particularly hard is throughout the last year and a half, we've been making decisions not just for ourselves, but for everyone around us. And I think that's harder to let go of than adjusting your own personal risk tolerance, is the idea that you are responsible for everyone around you. And so I agree with Farzad that it just takes time to make that transition. And there's nothing wrong with being prudent and taking it slow. But I do think we're finally getting to a place where we have the opportunity to do those things that are important to us, like have weddings, attend funerals, all of those milestones that you really hate to miss. And so I do think we should be taking advantage of those moments.
Well, the winner of this episode is the listener, because you guys have just been phenomenal. You've done a great job. And everybody listening to this, you win. Thanks, guys. Really loved connecting again.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Thank you, listener.
The producers of In the Bubble, Lemonada Media, have an exciting way for you to follow the show and all Lemonada shows. Subscribe to Lemonada Premium on Apple to support our podcasts and hosts so we can continue to bring you shows you love each week. Plus, you'll get amazing benefits like bonus content, early listens, discounted merch and event tickets, behind-the-scenes access, and more. All that for only $4.99 per month. Subscribe to Lemonada Premium on Apple Podcasts at bit.ly/Lemonada Premium. That's bit.ly/Lemonada Premium. Make life suck less and fill your cup with Lemonada. Listeners, I'm extremely excited to introduce you to another amazing podcast. Written Off is a new podcast by Lemonada Media and Black Bar Mitzvah that shines a light on formerly incarcerated young authors. Host Walter Thompson Hernandez interviews writers who were inside the U.S. prison system and notable creatives like John Legend, Issa Rae, and Keke Palmer perform their work. Hear vulnerable poems and honest stories play out against an original soundtrack like this.
At a young age, I ended up in a cage. Since 5th grade, I ain't even walked a stage, real talk. We sentence ourselves to isolation, leading to humiliation, all because we lack communication. But what does a world look like where we shatter these expectations?
The voices of those locked up in the U.S. prison system, some as minors, have been all but written off, but no more. The first 2 episodes of Written Off premiere July 14th. Listen wherever you get your podcasts. Okay, let's agree to 2 things. First of all, getting back to normal isn't just a physical experience, it's an emotional experience. People are on a journey. It's harder for some people than others. And we're going to listen to Dr. Lisa talk to folks and see where they are in that journey. The second rule is even more important. Don't use air quotes around the word normal. Getting back to normal. Like, I know everybody does that because they feel like you can't say the word normal and because there's a new normal and an old normal and all that. I agree with all that, but air quotes are so offensive. They're so offensive. They're so offensive. You know what I'm saying? So we're not going to use the air quotes. I encourage you not to use the air quotes. If you see people using the air quotes, we're going to have a kind of a petition going to prevent people from using air quotes. Because it's that important to recovering from this pandemic. Is normal does not need air quotes. It's just a word. It's just a thing. It's just a thing. And if you disagree, I'm sure I'll hear from you because Twitter is really good at that. Okay. So let's hear how people are getting back to normal.
What was the best thing after you got your vaccination?
Being able to travel. Truly travel. Get on an airplane. Get on a train.
Yeah. Does it feel like we're getting back to normal to you?
Unfortunately, I work in service industry, so I've been out here this entire time, but now I have to share my bathrooms with customers again. I'm not here for it at all. I'm not going to lie to you.
Do you feel like we're getting back to normal?
Yeah. I don't bring my mask anywhere.
How does that feel weird, or what do you feel about that?
I feel like we're back to normal, but I feel like when we go places, like I see a lot of people, vaccinated still wearing masks, and sometimes that, kind of surprises me. But then I realize, it's been a year that people have been, we've been living like this, so of course it's going to be a bit of an adjustment,
Okay.
But
does it feel like we're getting back to normal?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Like DC's open, like bars, clubs, like social life is open, so
Have you been out to bars?
Yeah.
And what's that like?
It's packed.
Really?
It makes me want to put my mask on.
So I noticed you're out here in Navy Yard having dinner. Is this your first time out since some of the masks have started coming out? People are getting vaccinated?
Are you vaccinated?
I am vaccinated.
I'm just checking you out in our face. I just make certain. Is you vaccinated?
I appreciate you asking.
No, but you know how it is.
I know exactly how it is.
But I figured you were, though.
I like that.
Yeah.
So we're outside at the shopping mall, and you have your mask on. Why are you still wearing your mask?
I'm still wearing my mask because I'm not fully vaccinated yet. Me and my sister got our first doses last week, but I just want to be cautious. I don't want to get anyone else around me sick.
Especially if they didn't get the vaccine, we want to make sure that everybody's safe. But we still have to get our second vaccine, so we're not fully vaccinated.
That's awesome. How old are you?
I'm 14 years old.
And you?
12.
And does it feel weird not having your mask on?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. I think I've personally been looking forward to it, right? So once I got vaccinated and the CDC said it was okay, it's like, okay, I am now wearing that except if I have to. So I remember vividly, so I'm a Muslim. So the first time that I was able to pray like close, because we pray like standing next to each other, was in North Carolina. It was the first time in over like 18 months I was able to like stand left and right, close, shoulder to shoulder with other people without masks. So it was kind of a monumental thing of, oh yeah.
And how did you feel the first time you were able to do that during the pandemic?
It felt good. It felt good.
And what's going on here?
This is the DC Different Drummers marching band. We are a LGBT plus group that performs in local parades and at local events, just to kind of bring music and celebration to the community.
And so how is it to be back outside without masks on?
It's a blast. We actually lifted our mask mandate today. We wanted to make sure that everything was super safe and that everyone in the membership was really comfortable with it. And so we wanted to make sure we were in a good place before we did that. But it's been a blast to get back out with everybody and to be back to doing what we love.
Nice. Is there anything that doesn't feel back to normal?
I think like people don't hug a lot anymore. I don't see that yet. People are still kind of fist pumping and elbow touching. So I'd like to see more people start hugging each other when they see each other again.
Yeah. What do you think it's going to take to bring the hugs back? Oh, they're hugging.
The hugs are back. The hugs are back.
Anything else you want to say about getting back to normal?
I think people shouldn't be afraid. The vaccine works and you can take the mask off.
That's me right there too. I was about to say, live your life, live free, be happy, be joyous.
Okay, thanks. You guys have a good day.
You too.
Lisa, in terms of getting back to normal, with one being China lockdown, 10 being New Hampshire live free or die, where are you living? Where are you living your life right now? What number?
I would have to say I'm closer to New Hampshire, live free or die. And the thing is, Andy, the data, early on, the data showed you could be outside without a mask because you were least likely to transmit or get coronavirus if you're outside. So throughout the pandemic, I tried to be outside as much as possible without my mask. And you should have seen all the side eyes and the evil looks I got.
So people may take time to adjust. That's fine. As a rule, we are anti-side-eyeing. Next question.
Or even people who know me, Dr. Lisa, where's your mask? So, yeah, I've been eager to get back to normal.
And is that because you're a risk taker or because you're following the science?
It's both. But I also know, as someone who has been a researcher who understands science and tries to explain it to other people, that we really can trust the science, even though it sounds confusing and we've been back and forth having to explain ourselves over and over again or explain why we made a mistake or why the data keep changing. At the core, we have to stand by the data.
So if you're closer to New Hampshire now, during the pandemic, Were you following the guidelines religiously closely, wearing masks indoors, avoiding big crowds, avoiding, particularly people of an older generation, being very careful? In other words, were you fastidious then as you are now, but just a little bit on the other side of things?
Absolutely. Yeah, I didn't see my mother face to face for almost a year. I always wore my mask when I couldn't social distance. Anytime I went to the grocery store, absolutely, I wore my mask. So absolutely. But now the science shows us that if you're fully vaccinated, you can get back to normal. It's time.
What kind of risks do you think you're taking? Do you think you're at risk of getting COVID?
No, I don't. And I don't think so because I'm fully vaccinated.
What if you had
even if I get COVID, it's not going to be a bad case of COVID.
What if you ran into the Delta variant monster?
I'm not worried about the variants, Andy. And people have been asking me, texting me, sending me emails. What about the Delta variant? Should I be afraid? And actually, Dr. Gandhi and I had a conversation about this just yesterday. People who are fully vaccinated should feel confident going out, living their lives. I know it sounds scary, but this is what viruses do. When they copy themselves, they make mistakes, and that's all a mutation or a variant is. So if you're fully vaccinated, you should also think about living free.
What if you got on an airplane and it was Delta Airlines and you were sitting next to a sorority sister from Tri Delta, and would you be nervous then?
No, nothing will shake my confidence in my vaccination, Andy. You can try all you want, but I'm fully vaccinated and I will live.
What if she took out a math equation and she was doing geometry and she was solving for Delta? Would you then be nervous?
Nice try. No, I wouldn't, because I'm fully vaccinated. And this is why I keep telling people, get the vaccination, and you can get peace of mind. You can live your life, get back to normal.
So the people you talked to who are getting back to normal, what were their attitudes? What was the mix of range of their attitudes? Were they closer to the China or closer to New Hampshire?
Actually, Andy, people were all over the place. There were people who told me, no, it's too soon. It's too soon to take off the mask. And these are people who are fully vaccinated. They don't have the confidence because they're concerned they might get it from someone else. I also had people who said, I'm so happy to take off my mask. It's about time.
So what's missing between them and you? You know more, you're smarter, you're better adjusted, you versus them who are kind of a mess. What's the difference?
Well, I think it's not exactly a fair comparison, being someone who has a background in medicine and science. But I think the difference for the general public, why do you have some people who say, I'm keeping my mask on despite vaccination versus I can't wait to take it off, is the communication. We haven't done a good job communicating the science and building trust. People don't trust what we say, Andy. It's unfortunate.
Is it also true that there's no real wrong answer? I mean, if someone's vaccinated and chooses to wear a mask because it makes them feel more comfortable, or chooses to avoid crowds, putting aside whether they have a child at home or someone who's immunocompromised, is it true that we're in a place where there are multiple right answers?
I agree with that. I absolutely agree with that. And everyone has to be comfortable, Andy. So if people feel comfortable without a mask, that's great. But the next person might not, and that's okay too. And I think because even science is never 100%, we can't give people guarantees. People have to make these decisions at their own pace.
All right, let me tell you what we have coming up. We're going to finish the third part of our series on Wednesday with Dr. Scott Gottlieb. Dr. Gottlieb is a powerhouse of science, information, policy, politics, and it is a phenomenal episode to give us a real sense of the state of where we are now. And then next week, part 4, we're going into a conversation about the unvaccinated and why people are not getting vaccinated, what the challenge is in talking to them and vaccinating them, and different beliefs out there. We're going to have, first, the people who have done the best work, in my opinion, at understanding and studying people who are not getting vaccinated and why. Molly Brody from the Kaiser Family Foundation, and Frank Luntz, the political poster who has done tremendous amount of work in focus groups and listening to people and hearing why people aren't getting vaccinated. And then on Wednesday, we're going to talk about the dimensions of that with a great person, David Axelrod. He's got a podcast called The Axe Files. He was a political advisor for President Barack Obama, and he is a great social political commentator. And so we're going to finish up part 4 next week with a best understanding we can of how we meet the challenge of the people in the country that aren't yet vaccinated. Have a great couple days. We'll talk to you on Wednesday. Thanks for listening to In the Bubble. Hope you rate us highly. We're a production of Lemonada Media. Chrissy Pease and Alex McGowan produced the show. Our mix is by Ivan Kuryev. Jessica Cordova Kramer and Stephanie Whittleswax still rule our lives and executive produce the show. And our theme was composed by Dan Malad and Oliver Hill, and additional music by Ivan Kuryev. You can find out more about our show on social media at Lemonada Media, and you can find me at @Slavitt on Twitter or at Andy Slavitt on Instagram. If you like what you heard today, most importantly, please tell your friends to come listen. And please stay safe, share some joy, and we will get through this together. Hey, are you a nurse? Or do you know a nurse looking for a career change? Trusted by over 200,000 nurses, Incredible Health makes it easy to get high-paying permanent nursing positions that match your preferences and career goals. Instead of spending countless hours on job applications, nurses just fill out one profile and are matched to the perfect positions in Incredible Health's network of over 350 top hospitals and health systems. You even get a personal nurse concierge who can help you with resume tips, interview prep, job offer evaluation, and much more. The best part, it's all 100% free. So if you're a nurse and are curious what opportunities are out there, go to incrediblehealth.com/bubble and find your dream job. That's incrediblehealth.com/bubble.
Hi, I'm Kulap Vilaysack.
And I'm Sujin Pak.
We host Add to Cart from Lemonada Media, a show about the things we buy
and buy into. I love a Timothée Chalamet. I realize that an older woman saying that I could sound slightly thirsty cougar, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
I have put him on the shelf. I look at him, I wave at him because I must clear the altar for Stephen Yeun.
Yes.
Just clear the altar.
There was once Timothy. Shh. And now,
Stephen
Yeun.
Add to Cart is available wherever you get your podcasts.